Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're going to look at the recently released Call of Duty Modern Warfare Gunfight Alpha, and see how it compares visually to Infinity Ward's remastered Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, both of which are being played on the PS4 Pro. Now this is just an early comparison, and unfortunately we are limited to only a handful of maps and features, but I'll be sure to revisit this title when the game officially releases this fall. Also, bear in mind that the latest Modern Warfare is still in its alpha state, so any conclusions made here could potentially change by release. Alright, so to kick this comparison off, let's look at some textures and model designs. Now, because of the gunfight mode being the only available mode in the alpha, I can only showcase weapons that I just so happen to be randomly assigned throughout several different matches. But I was still able to find quite a few similar weapons that are shared between games, and using these, I discovered some interesting changes. First, we have the Desert Eagle. The first thing I noticed with this, and practically every weapon in this new Modern Warfare, is that the weapons themselves don't take up nearly as much screen space, making them appear much smaller than in Call of Duty 4. On top of this, the deagle used in the latest Modern Warfare appears to be an updated variant, likely the Mark 19, with a black metal finish on the hammer and iron sight, along with a different slide and muzzle. Though the most interesting change is how these two weapons handle when firing. When firing the deagle in Call of Duty 4, there's a massive amount of recoil with every shot, that causes the weapon to kick up significantly. However, this animation is repeated identically after each subsequent shot, killing the illusion of realism and giving it a more artificial appearance. The new Modern Warfare has far more sophisticated firing and reloading animations. The deagle now kicks back, and you can see the soldier struggling to regain control of the weapon as he wrestles it back to a resting position. All of these changes seem to extend to the various other shared weapons in the games. And what's interesting here is that while the weapon models in the newer game do feature more details and realistic shadowing, the actual quality of the textures appears to be less than that of Call of Duty 4. Based on the lower average performance of Modern Warfare on the PS4 Pro, my guess is that this has more to do with the lower output resolution, suggesting that Infinity Ward is currently struggling to improve the visuals without sacrificing the expected smooth 60 FPS. It'll be interesting to see how this translates to the PC version of the game, and whether the textures still appear blurrier than its counterpart. But for now, you will notice a slightly more blurry picture in the new Modern Warfare in its current state. Next, let's look at how the environments have changed. Unfortunately, the Modern Warfare Alpha at the time of recording only includes 4 small-scale arena maps specifically tailored for the gunfight mode. However, despite its smaller size, the new game's environments appear to be far more detailed and impressive than the environments in Call of Duty 4. Levels like Pine, for example, feature an abundance of vegetation, with trees blanketing the arena in dense shadow and plenty of grass and bushes helping to fill out the scene. When looking more closely at various environmental objects, it's clear that the textures have been improved substantially with the latest game, with more detailed ground textures and trees that feature more overall depth. Now, at this point, I'm sure you've already noticed the drastic difference in lighting, and this might be one of the biggest improvements made with Modern Warfare. The lighting in Call of Duty 4 Remastered, and practically all of the Call of Duty games released for this console generation, has been disappointing to say the least. Environments often appear washed out and lifeless, and things like God rays and volumetric lighting are practically non-existent. But thanks to the new engine being used for the latest Modern Warfare, the lighting has been improved dramatically. Environments appear to have much more color variety, and God rays now pour through the trees, creating a much more accurate and realistic presentation. It's still not the best implementation of volumetric lighting, but it's certainly a major step forward. Shadows have also seen a pretty big improvement. For one, you can now see your own shadow, a feature that wasn't available in Call of Duty 4 at all. Thanks to the new lighting effects, environments in general appear to have much darker shadows, which not only looks better, but will also drastically affect the gameplay experience, as players hiding under tree canopies or in small crevices will be much harder to spot. Next up, let's take a brief look at special effects, starting with the fire effects. Fire effects in Call of Duty 4 were pretty minimal, with basic fire sprites attaching to props in the environment and typically not emitting any sort of light that was reflected against nearby environmental props. For the most part, these effects only appeared near explosions or in set locations throughout the many different environments. The new Modern Warfare, however, features much more realistic fire effects, with flames that glow within destroyed vehicles and not only illuminate the wreckage, but also reflect off of the player's weapons. Grenades, however, don't seem to feature the same explosive punch that they used to. After exploding, the smoke and dirt from the grenade seems to fade far quicker than the effects in Call of Duty 4, suggesting that perhaps Infinity Ward is aiming for a slightly more realistic approach. Smoke grenades, on the other hand, appear much more volumetric and impressive, with several different layers of smoke helping to properly block sight lines, while also reacting somewhat realistically to the environmental light. Next up, I want to briefly go over some of the biggest changes to the actual gameplay experience, starting with the time to kill. Unlike the past several Call of Duty games, Infinity Ward's reimagined Modern Warfare features a much shorter time to kill. Weapons typically only take 3 to 4 shots to kill an enemy, and in this particular 2v2 mode, health doesn't appear to regenerate either. Instead, taking direct fire will cause the screen to lose its color. If you manage to duck behind cover for long enough, the color will return, but based on the team health at the top of the screen, the actual player health does not regenerate. This appears to be strictly a part of the unique 2v2 game mode, so it will be interesting to see how the health regen and time to kill functions in the main multiplayer modes when the game releases in October. The new Modern Warfare also introduces the ability to mount weapons on objects, similar to the bipods in Call of Duty World War II and some of the older games in the series. But unlike these bipods, this mounting maneuver can be used on practically every weapon in the game, on either waist-high cover or around any corner, replacing the need for a dedicated peeking button. This new Modern Warfare also includes the ability to slide into a crouch, similar to the sliding mechanic used in Call of Duty Ghost and Black Ops 4, though the duration of the slide is much shorter and the transition into the prone stance is even longer, making it difficult to drop shot enemies. Another important change is the new melee execution animations, which can be performed when approaching an unsuspecting enemy from behind. When triggered, the camera is changed into a third-person cinematic camera, allowing players to humiliate their opponents with brutal takedowns, as opposed to simply swiping their knife and stabbing in the old game. These are only some of the bigger changes that I've noticed in terms of the handling and gameplay, though when the full game releases, I'll be sure to cover all the changes to various game modes, weapons, and mechanics in even greater detail. Finally, let's wrap up with a short sound comparison. Unfortunately, I couldn't test the sound in the Modern Warfare Alpha in a private offline match, so there will be some background sound effects from other players fighting, but you should still be able to get a rough idea of how the sound quality has changed nonetheless. Which game do you think has the better overall sound quality? And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, the latest Modern Warfare game appears to improve upon the Call of Duty franchise in just about every way. The environments appear much more lifelike, weapons feel more visceral, and the lighting has been improved upon dramatically. However, the complexity of the graphics do appear to have taken their toll on the console hardware, as the latest Modern Warfare does appear to be running at a lower resolution, and the game performance felt a little more sluggish than it usually does. It's possible all these things could change moving into the beta and final release stages, and it'll be even more interesting to see how the game appears on the PC platform later on. But what do you guys think? Are you impressed with the new visual design for Modern Warfare? Or did you prefer the remastered visuals of Call of Duty 4? Let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every week.